Today, I'd like to talk about this book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. So Rick Rubin, very famous record producer. Here he is, Rick. He's getting ready to meditate there. And a label owner, famously Def Jam Recordings co-owner. He's worked with all sorts of artists, broad range, really broad range of artists, from pop to metal to hip hop, and been involved in the production work on a huge amount of very successful albums. And he's also famous for bringing a lot of diverse techniques and philosophies into the studio. He's quite similar in some ways to Brian Eno in that way. Obviously, not many people can afford to hire Rick Rubin to help produce their music project, but most people can afford his book. So in here is a distillation of the types of techniques and the types of principles that he uses in the studio to help musicians. So that's what this book is. And since this book came out a couple of years ago in 2023, there has been a lot of promotion work on the book. Rick Rubin has been endlessly interviewed on YouTube, and lots of different artists and musicians and creators have talked about this book in their videos on YouTube. There's all sorts of people that have reviewed this in lots of different ways. And a lot of those videos by artists and musicians and creators tend to give you a handful of takeaways from the book, things that people have found useful by using it, which is great because it gives you maybe their top techniques that they have found in this book. But I want to do something slightly different here in that I'm not really going to focus on the top pages or the top takeaways that I've had from this book. Instead, I'm just going to do an overview of how the book works and the ways that I've used it in the past. Excuse me, Rick. So the book is organized, if you look at the contents page here, 78 areas of thought. So 78 small chapters. All of the chapters are very short. And then occasionally in between chapters, you get these little summary pages, thoughtful little pages. It reminds me of Seth Godin's approach. He calls them riffs. In the same way that Seth Godin's books tend to build up through multiple different angles, build up an overall system, this is very similar. So what's quite nice is in this first page here, I think this is very true about this book. It's got so many different approaches, and sometimes they're going to work for you and other times they're not. Just depends where you're at, your state of mind, what you're looking for. And so it's quite useful. Rick says here, nothing in this book is known to be true. It's a reflection on what I've noticed, not facts so much as thoughts. Some ideas may resonate, others may not. Use what's helpful, let go of the rest. So it's been out for a couple of years, this book, and initially I borrowed it from the public library and I found it very useful, so I borrowed it again. And after borrowing it a couple of times and finding it quite useful, I thought I'd best buy my own copy. So I bought my own copy about a year ago. It's a very nice book. It's like cloth covered and printed. It's very nice. And so, yeah, I've had this about a year. And the approach generally seems to come from two kind of angles. There's quite a lot of spirituality in the book. It tends to have a Buddhist feel to it. So as you can see, I think Rick has been meditating for many, many years. And there is a lot of talk of awareness and opening up and non-judging, just seeing, just being. There's a lot of Buddhist ideology in the book. And there is some productivity ideas as well in there. So limitations and not setting rules and questioning what rules are. So there are those types of ideas as well as the kind of more spiritual ideas. The first half of the book presents a kind of structure and a way of going about work that mirrors the creative process from beginning to end. And then the second part of the book kind of leaves that alone and starts to talk more in a generic sense about states of mind and ways to approach work. So it's kind of split in those two halves. And there's a number of words and concepts that are used quite a lot in the first half of the book. So I'll just bring all those in now and we'll talk briefly about them. So these are the kind of concepts, words that Rick uses when he's talking about the creative process. And this is really the first half of the book, how it works. There's lots of ideas about how you can increase your awareness of what he calls source, the source, everything. So everything that's feeding into your mind. And then through your awareness, it's becoming filtered. Source makes available, the filter distills, the vessel receives. This often happens beyond our control. As you can see, it's quite a spiritual idea, but it's quite good. There are a lot of techniques about opening up to bring more into the creative process and ways of filtering that enormous amount of information. So that's what this first part is really talking about. Look for what you notice, but no one else sees. Creating seeds is the next part. So seeds, it's like, could be anything. Just to start off the creative process. Having ideas, starting to make things, sketching things, and collecting things, but not really doing much with it. So you're just moving on, you're just creating, just making. Seeds. So in the first phase of the creative process, we are to be completely open, collecting anything we find of interest. A seed for a song could be a phrase, a melody, a bass line, or a rhythmic feel. For a written piece, it may be a sentence, a character sketch, a setting, a thesis, or a plot point. That's how Rick describes it. Lots of ideas, lots of bits and pieces that you're working with. And then you move into another phase where you're taking those seeds and you're working on them a bit. You're crafting them, he calls it. So you take the seeds, you craft them, and then you experiment, you broaden it out, and then you work on them a bit more. Some seeds don't work. Some seeds do. Until eventually this process ends up with you getting to more finished work and eventually being able to finish work. So this is the general system that is in the book. Source material, filtering it in through your mind, through yourself, through your influences, generating lots of bits and pieces and ideas, and then slowly bringing those into focus over time. So that's what he talks about in the first half of the book. And then in the second part of the book, there are lots of chapters that are more about a general approach to art. So there are all sorts of ideas about state of mind and how to deal with success and failure, those types of things. You may sometimes wonder, why am I doing this? What's it all for? Questions such as these come early and often for some. Others seem to go their whole lives without ever troubling themselves with these thoughts. Maybe they know that the maker and the explainer are always two different people, even when they're the same person. In the end, these questions are of little importance. Do what you can with what you have. Nothing more is needed. However you frame yourself as an artist, the frame is too small. So that's really the overall structure of the book. And I've used the book in a couple of ways so far. I have used it when I've been struggling with my work, so a kind of creative block, artist block kind of situation. And I have just sat down in those moments and read through the whole book a couple of times, because it is quite useful, I think, as a reset, because all those ideas and having this kind of system to just remind yourself of all the different stages of a healthy creative process. And then lots of kind of opening up and lots of ideas about ways to think and ways not to think. it's very useful in that way to just sit down if you're really struggling and just read it, because it doesn't take that long to read. And so I have used it in that way a couple of times. And another way you can use it is you can just open it to a page. So you can use it in a similar way to Brian Eno's oblique strategies. Or in fact, my pivot cards, that's a similar thing where you can just get an idea to inspire you to be creative. So I use it in both of those ways, and it's been a very useful book to me. Because there are lots of different techniques and lots of different ways of looking at things, sometimes you can think that some things are quite contradictory. So he'll be saying, on one hand, he was saying, open up, don't judge, bring everything into your awareness. And then on another page, you'll be saying, limit what you're doing, because both of those things can work in different situations. So sometimes there are contradictory ideas in the book, but that, I think that's good, because those things can be useful at different times. And the other thing that I think is quite nice about this book is that the overall feel of it is quite gentle. So it's very kind, be kind to yourself. And there are chapters on self-doubt and patience, and everything we do can be seen as art. Everyone is a creator. I've found that if I'm not feeling great about my process and I'm maybe a bit stuck, that this book's quite nice because it is quite gentle and quite encouraging. So that's one aspect of the book that I really appreciate. Think to yourself, I'm just here to create. So that is The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. It's a book that I very much recommend. As I say, it's been quite helpful to me over the last year or so. It can get you out of a creative slump, and also it can just make you feel a bit better. Some very practical ideas and some very esoteric ideas, all of that brought together can be very, very useful, I've found. So I would definitely recommend this book to anyone. If you're an artist, a musician or a creator, I think it's a great book to own. So I very much recommend Rick Rubin's book. And if you are thinking of getting a copy, then you could always use my affiliate link down below, because then I'll get a few pence, and that's one way to support the channel. Other ways to support what I do here on the channel, you can sign up to my Patreon, where you'll get videos early and without ads and all sorts of other freebies. Or you can sign up to my Substack, which is my journal, where again, you'll get all sorts of bits and pieces. There's Rick, he's off to meditate. So hopefully you found that video useful. Let me know whether you did or whether you didn't down in the comments. And if you own this book, then also, have you found it useful or did you not like it? So that's all for today. So see you next time. Cheers. Thanks. All the best.